And now we receive social rights advocate and activist Lisbeth Melendez here from the South. Hello, Lisbeth.
How are you?
I'm fine, Lisbeth. How are you?
I am well, thank you.
So thank you for being here from the South. And we have to address several topics here today. So regarding the Venezuela parliamentary elections, which are your considerations about this process?
Look, people had choices about voting or not voting. I think that there is a good sector of the country that voted. The people have spoken. The National Assembly is now, it will be in new hands. And, starting from that particular point, we hope that the wishes and desires of the people of Venezuela are brought forth and we're able to have a stable government that is not dominated by foreign powers, that really speak to, again, the desire and the wishes of the people of Venezuela. And so I've yet to hear, with the exception of your usual suspects, commentary around fraud or anything else, meaning that those who went to vote believed in the system, trusted the system, and those who decided not to exercise the right to vote can simply say, the results were not due to any other factor, but the fact that if they did not like what the future brought to them, they should have been there for to exercise their right. Those who tried to exercise the right were able to do so without any complaints.
So, in the same topic, under your considerations, what can come now for Latin American people after these results?
Well, I think it's a validation of the current government of Venezuela and other countries, not just those surrounding Venezuela, like Brazil and Colombia and others, Panama, but also across the entire continent, as well as beyond the lines of this, the continent we call America. To respect and to engage with the government of Venezuela the way that they have with other governments with which they might not agree, and really stop ignoring the rules or maybe the desires of imperialistic countries such as the United States. Look, we know that the world will listen to the people versus to other governments, and I think Cuba is a perfect example of that, where much of the world has been able to engage with the government of Cuba, even in light of the cruel embargo that the United States has imposed in the island. The same tactics that being used against Venezuela, and we hope that they've learned their lesson and don't make the same mistakes, so that we can thrive as a continent and specifically let the people of Venezuela thrive.
So these elections were primordial, were paramount for Latin American people. We know that, and we thank you for that criteria. But I have another question for you, because you are a human rights activist. You are, you are an advocate for peace and human rights respect. Let's say that. So in this case, how can these results confront or overturn the hostile policies from the U.S. towards Venezuela? Sorry.
Unfortunately, I wish that I could say to you that the upcoming change of administration will mean a change in attitudes in the United States towards the government of Venezuela. I don't believe that is possible at the moment. I believe that when you think that the world must be ruled in a homogenetic way, they are, and that way is your way. We then encounter moments in a lack of relationship between our governments that will hurt both the people in this country and the people of Venezuela. Will they change? Not anytime soon. But the challenge is not just to the United States, but to all of us in general that have families in Venezuela, that have friends in Venezuela, to give them a voice to express their opinions and to express the right, because self-determination and freedom of expression are primordial for us to be able to change the attitudes of these governments towards what it is clearly a moment in which people have asserted their right to express their opinions through the mechanism of voting.
So, Lisbeth, we have a last question for you, and I know this is one between us because we had a previous interview regarding the U.S. elections in October, and now, over a month after that time, I have this question. Were these elections similar or different in what way?
Similar or different into the ones in Venezuela, or similar and different in terms of the elections here every day?
Both cases. In the case that, how do you think that it's different, the Venezuelan parliamentary elections from the process of the voting in the U.S.? How do you perceive that?
Well, for one, the elections in Venezuela had more humanitarian observers than we've ever seen before. For the first time in the history of this country, of the United States, we had international observers. So those things are very similar. There is a distrust in the systems. I think that is at the moment a global issue that we must address, that the ways in which people are going about exercising the democratic rights are being put in doubt by the global communities for good or bad reason. And I'm not passing judgment on either of those, those, but the distrust is there, and is a good thing that we as human rights activists go and stand up in solidarity with the process to ensure the process is true to the directives, meaning people have the right to vote and that the votes are not changed, charged, or mounted. Right. So we are in similar situations. We have governments that are fighting for validity. In the particular case of Venezuela, it's a government that has already been in government, that is established, and the people have expressed the desire to continue with this government. In the United States, the case is to remove somebody who's no longer the wish of the people, remains as a global representative of the country. And they're going about the same issues in different ways. And so, are they different? Yes. Are they similar? Absolutely. I think that there is this, again, I just want to bring home this point about distrust in the system and how psychologically manipulated a country's peoples can be to trust or distrust their government. And what does that look like for the overall well-being of the country as a whole, which in the United States at this particular moment is in doubt.
Exactly. I think 2020 has been a hard year for everyone in the world, but this year had been also a voting year, an election year, and a year to change the political landscape in several countries. I think that. Do you coincide with me? Are you agree with me?
I totally agree. I think that just like the beginning of the last century, the first 20 years of the 20th century, I think the first 20 years of the 21st century have signaled in very similar ways, for those who not believe that history repeats itself, around pandemics, around changes in governmental structures, about the desire of what people wishes for their future. It is a change of generation, it's a change of thinking, and has made it, because of the pandemic and because of in this particular case, the globality of the pandemic, made it really hard for people to emotionally and intellectually engage with change. And so there's a resistance that has a lot to do with the fears and instability that we feel, not just in our own small enclaves, but really without places to go where we will be able to hide from the current conditions. That means that countries will be changing, not just now, but I believe that in elections coming in the next couple of years across the world, we will see that sputtering of changes happening, and we will probably end up with a very different world by the time we reach this 22nd century. But the seeds are being planted now.
Thank you, Lisbeth, for all your